July 2026. The Sahel is underwater, and I do not mean that metaphorically. Record rainfall is hammering the region with an intensity that meteorologists are struggling to find historical comparisons for. Flash floods are tearing through villages that have not seen water this aggressive in living memory. Crops are being flattened. Roads are disappearing. Communities built generations ago on the assumption that this land is dry, brutally, reliably, predictably dry, are watching brown water rush through their streets with a violence that feels almost personal. And here is the paradox that stopped me completely when I first understood it. This water, all of it, will be gone within weeks. Not gradually, not slowly absorbed into a gradually replenishing water table. Gone, evaporated into a sky that will return to its default setting of merciless, unforgiving heat, soaked into sandy soil that holds nothing, rushed off into riverbeds that will be bone dry again before the next planting season even begins. The Sahel in 2026 is simultaneously experiencing its worst flooding and its most severe long-term water scarcity. Too much water, then none at all. And for generations, literally generations, the response to this paradox from the international development community has been exactly what you would expect from institutions that benefit from African dependency. Aid, emergency relief, temporary infrastructure, foreign contractors arriving with foreign equipment, building systems that require foreign spare parts and foreign technical knowledge to maintain, and then leaving, taking that knowledge with them, ensuring that the next flood season produces the same emergency and the same need for the same aid from the same sources. I have covered development in Africa for years, and I have never been more convinced that the system is working exactly as designed. But something is different in July 2026. Something is being built across the Alliance of Sahel, states that is not temporary, not foreign, not designed to create dependency. It is designed to end this cycle permanently. And the weapon being used to end it is the flood itself. To understand what is happening across the Sahel right now, you need to understand the geography of the problem first. Because the Sahel relationship with water is unlike almost anywhere else on Earth, and that uniqueness is precisely what has made it so vulnerable for so long. The region receives most of its annual rainfall in an intense compressed window of 2 to 3 months. During this period, which the 2026 season is demonstrating can be violently unpredictable, enormous volumes of water arrive in a landscape that has spent the previous 9 months baking under temperatures that regularly exceed 40 degrees Celsius. The ground is hard, compacted, almost impermeable in many areas after months of heat exposure. So what happens when intense rainfall hits impermeable ground? It does not absorb, it runs. It accelerates across the surface, picking up speed and topsoil and anything else in its path, forming flash floods of remarkable destructive power that can appear within minutes of a heavy rainfall event and destroy in hours what communities have built over years. Then the rains stop. The floods drain away. The standing water evaporates under the returning heat. The riverbeds go dry, and the farmers who just survived the flooding face the same existential question they face every year. How do we grow enough food in the window between the end of the rains and the beginning of the next dry season to survive until the rains come back? One harvest cycle per year in an agricultural reality where global food prices in 2026 are at historic highs, where supply chain disruptions have made imported food expensive and unreliable, where the lean season, that brutal period between the exhaustion of last season's stores and the arrival of the next harvest, is measured in children's hunger and family crisis. One harvest cycle in a region capable of producing 3. This is not a resource problem. The water exists. It arrives every year in quantities that, if captured and managed intelligently, could irrigate the soil year-round. This is an infrastructure problem, and infrastructure, the right kind of infrastructure, built by the right people for the right purposes, is exactly what the Alliance of Sahel states has decided it will no longer wait for foreign donors to provide. Let me tell you about the moment this shift becomes real for me. I am reading through engineering assessments of what is being built across Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger in 2026, and I keep seeing the same phrase repeated in different documents instruments from different sources: indigenous materials, local labor, domestic technical capacity, not awaiting foreign contractor, not pending international tender, not subject to donor approval. Indigenous, local, domestic. The massive earthen reservoirs being constructed across the Alliance of Sahel states in 2026 are being built using a philosophy that is as radical as it is simple. The earth that the floods run across is the same earth being used to contain them. Local technicians who understand the specific hydrology of their specific terrain are making the engineering decisions. Workers from the communities that will benefit from the water storage are the ones digging, compacting, and constructing the containment structures. No foreign contractors, no imported equipment that breaks down and cannot be repaired locally, no technical dependency built into the foundation of the infrastructure itself. This matters more than most people realize, because one of the most insidious features of the foreign aid infrastructure model is that it engineers dependency into the physical structure of the projects it builds. Equipment that requires foreign spare parts, systems that require foreign software, updates, designs that require foreign engineers to maintain. Every time a pump breaks or a control system fails, the community that depends on it must go back to the foreign source, confirming the dependency, extending the contract, ensuring the relationship continues. It is not always deliberate, but it is always convenient for the supplier. The earthen reservoir model being deployed across the AES in 2026 is designed with the opposite philosophy. These are structures that local communities can maintain, repair, expand, and replicate using knowledge and materials that exist within the community itself. When something goes wrong, and in infrastructure, things always eventually go wrong. The solution does not require a phone call to Paris or a purchase order to a European equipment supplier. It requires the same local knowledge and local labor that built the structure in the first place. Now, the engineering of these reservoirs is more sophisticated than the word earthen might suggest. Capturing high-velocity flash floods before evaporation takes hold requires precise placement, precise design, and precise management of water inflow that, if done wrong, can result in reservoir failure that is as destructive as the floods it was designed to contain. The technical teams working across the AES have spent months studying the specific terrain, the specific flood patterns, and the specific seasonal water movement of each targeted location. The reservoirs are positioned not just where water can be stored, but where water will naturally concentrate during flood events, minimizing the infrastructure needed to direct flow into the containment basin. Strategic placement is everything, and the strategic placement of these water fortresses, as they are increasingly being called inside the engineering teams, is being designed with a larger vision in mind that goes far beyond individual community water storage. A unified hydrological grid across all three nations of the Alliance of Sahel states. I want you to think about what that means for a moment. Individual reservoirs capture local flood water and provide local irrigation capacity. Valuable, significant, life-changing for the communities they serve. But a coordinate network of reservoirs, connected through transport corridors and managed through shared data on seasonal water availability, creates something categorically different. It creates a regional water security architecture, a system where surplus water capacity in one area can inform agricultural planning in another, where the combined storage capacity of hundreds of local reservoirs adds up to a regional buffer against drought that no single nation could maintain alone. This is the Sahel thinking about water, the way it is learning to think about food, about economic sovereignty, not as individual nations managing individual crises, as a confederation managing a shared resource with shared infrastructure for shared benefit. But the water storage infrastructure, as transformational as it is only the first part of what is being built, because water in a reservoir that is not connected to farmland is just a lake. The permanent irrigation networks being constructed alongside the reservoir systems are what convert stored water into actual food sovereignty. And this is where the engineering ambition of the 2026 program becomes genuinely breathtaking. Permanent. That word is doing a lot of work in that sentence, and I want to make sure it lands properly. The irrigation systems being built across the AES in 2026 are not seasonal. They are not the kind of temporary drought response irrigation channels that international humanitarian organizations deploy during crisis years and then abandon when the emergency funding runs out. They are designed for year-round operation, for decade-long productive capacity, for the kind of agricultural consistency that allows a farmer to plant 3 harvest cycles per year instead of 1, and actually rely on that plan rather than treating it as an optimistic guess subject to the mercy of rainfall patterns that 2026 is demonstrating cannot be reliably predicted. 3 harvests per year instead of 1. The mathematics of what this means for food security in the Soro are straightforward and they are staggering. 1 harvest cycle means 1 opportunity per year to produce enough food to survive. 1 failure, 1 drought, 1 flood, 1 pest outbreak, 1 conflict disruption, and the entire year's food security is compromised. The lean season becomes a hunger season. The hunger season becomes a crisis. The crisis becomes an emergency appeal. The emergency appeal becomes foreign aid. The foreign aid comes with conditions. The conditions ensure continued dependency. 3 harvest cycles per year means 3 opportunities to produce. 1 failure in 3 is a setback, not a catastrophe. It means food stores that carry communities through disruptions rather than collapsing at the first shock. It means surplus production that feeds local markets, stabilizes local prices, and generates the kind of consistent agricultural income that allows rural communities to invest in their own futures rather than simply surviving to the next season. It means the lean season disappears, not reduced, not managed better with foreign food aid supplements, eliminated by growing food in the months that used to be defined by hunger. When I fully understood this, when I mapped out what 3 annual harvests instead of 1 actually means for families who have built their entire survival strategy around a single agricultural window, I sat back and thought about how many decades this solution has been available and how many decades it has been prevented from arriving by a development system that profits from the problem it claims to be solving. Here is the part of this story that the international agriculturally development industry absolutely does not want discussed. The technology being deployed across the Sahel in 2026 is not new. Earthen reservoir construction for flood water harvesting is ancient. Communities across the Sahel were building rudimentary versions of these structures centuries before any European development organization existed to offer technical assistance. The knowledge of where water concentrates, how to capture it, how to channel it to fields, this is indigenous knowledge, Sahel knowledge. Knowledge that exists within the communities being served, not in the offices of foreign contractors or the databases of international NGOs. What has changed in 2026 is not the technology. What has changed is the political decision to use it, and the political decision to stop building infrastructure that serves foreign contractors and start building infrastructure that serves Sahelian communities. The Western agricultural model that has been promoted across the Sahel for decades, expensive imported irrigation technology, debt-heavy infrastructure projects, modern equipment that requires foreign maintenance contracts, has not failed because of poor implementation. It has delivered exactly what it was designed to deliver: dependency. Farmers who cannot maintain their own irrigation infrastructure without foreign technical support. Communities that cannot expand their water storage without new donor funding. Agricultural sectors permanently oriented toward the export crops that earn foreign exchange rather than the food crops that feed families, because the debt financing of the imported infrastructure requires foreign exchange earnings to service. The Earthen reservoir and permanent irrigation network being built by local hands with local materials across the AES in 2026 is not just a water infrastructure project. It is a rejection of that entire model, a physical, constructed, measurable rejection built into the landscape of the Sahel in a form that will outlast the political moment that created it and continue delivering water to Sahelian farms long after every foreign contractor who might have built it differently has moved on to the next emergency somewhere else. The impact is already visible in local markets across the alliance of Sahel states. And this is the part that surprises even the people who have been following this program most closely. In a year when global food prices are at historic highs, when supply chain Disruptions have made imported food expensive and unreliable across most of West Africa. Local food prices in communities served by the new reservoir and irrigation infrastructure are stabilizing, not because of subsidies, not because of price controls or government intervention in markets, because there is more food. Local farmers producing second and third harvests from irrigated land that used to produce one are bringing more food to market more consistently throughout the year. The seasonal price spikes that have historically defined lean season economics in the Sahel, where food prices double or triple as stored supplies run out and the next harvest is still months away, are being flattened by the simple presence of more locally grown food available more consistently. This is what food sovereignty actually feels like at the household level, not a policy paper, not a presidential speech, not an international conference resolution. Cheaper food, more consistent supply, local farmers earning income in months that used to be months of pure expense. The global supply chain chaos of 2026 that is sending food prices through the roof across much of the developing world is revealing something important about the Sahel communities that have invested in local water infrastructure. They are less exposed to global price shocks than their neighbors, because when you grow your own food consistently year-round with water you captured yourself using, infrastructure you built yourself, the price of imported grain from Ukraine or subsidized European wheat becomes someone else's problem. I want to end with something that stayed with me long after I finished reporting this story. The floods of July 2026 are the worst the Sahel has seen in years. Villages are flooded, roads are washed out. The international media is running the familiar images of West African disaster, brown water, displaced families, emergency appeals. And in the middle of all of that, teams of local technicians and community workers are standing at reservoir intake points across Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, watching the same floodwater that is destroying homes downstream fill their containment basins to capacity. They are not watching a disaster. They are watching next year's harvest arrive early. That is the shift that has happened in the Sahel in 2026. Not in the international headlines, not in the development reports, not in the emergency funding. Appeals. In the minds and the hands and the engineering decisions of people who have decided, finally, permanently, without apology, that the water their land receives belongs to them, that the food their soil can produce belongs to them, that the future their children will inhabit belongs to them, and that they will build it themselves. The days of relying on outside help for survival are over. The flood is no longer the enemy, it is the resource, and the Sahel, with its own hands, its own knowledge, and its own sovereign determination, is learning to use it. Like this video, subscribe to the SOR Bulletin, share this with every African who needs to understand that the SOR is not waiting to be saved, it is saving itself, and we will be here every single step of the way.